Ha sido invitada al Congreso del Futuro y ella ha gentilmente venido a la Facultad, a este conversatorio, a hablar de los temas que mueven su agenda, que son cambio global, mujer y ciencia. Entonces, vamos a partir con una breve charla de Sara, que es más bien una conversación, y después vamos a hacer una serie de preguntas donde va a participar Adriana, que nos acompaña, que es presidenta de la red de investigadoras, y yo, y quien se quiera unir también puede hacerlo. Entonces, contarles un poco del background de la doctora Myhre. Yo me he sorprendido porque Sara terminó su PhD en ecología en el año 2014 en la Universidad de California en Davis. Eso es muy reciente, ¿cierto? Pero ha tenido una intensa agenda. Ella es investigadora asociada de la Escuela de Oceanografía de la Universidad de Washington en este momento. Es una de las líderes en el campo de la ciencia climática y también la comunicación en ciencia. Y por supuesto también es una activista y defensora de las voces y liderazgo de las mujeres, tanto en ciencia como en la sociedad. Actualmente su línea de investigación se centra en los registros de sedimentos marinos para comprender cómo los abruptos periodos de calentamiento del pasado se comparan con los cambios que hoy día observamos, ¿cierto? Que son aumento de los niveles de dióxido de carbono, aumento de la temperatura, todo efecto del cambio global, ¿cierto? En esta corta carrera académica, ¿cierto?, que ella lleva, tiene 12 distinciones. Las últimas, en el año 2018, es fellow de la Fundación Cambio, que es una fundación que se dedica a hacer promoción de la ciencia en la sociedad. El año 2018 también fue destacada como una de las 50 mujeres de mayor influencia en el área de Seattle. Y también recibió una distinción de un centro de comunicación científica del área Pacífico. Y así un sinnúmero de distinciones y una muy productiva carrera académica en términos de publicaciones y proyectos. Así que para nosotros es un gran honor tenerla. Esto va a ser un conversatorio en Spanglish, vamos a hacer switch entre español e inglés. Tenemos una pregunta. ¿Requieren traducción del inglés alguien? ¿O podemos seguirla en inglés? Tal vez si hay necesidad de traducción de preguntas, nosotros las podemos hacer. Thanks for being here. I think you follow most of it.
Thank you so much for having me. I want to begin by apologizing for the fact that I have to speak English. It reflects my own ignorance and the lack of emphasis in the American educational system on bilingualism, and also reflects that the United States believes that it's the only country in the world, right? So with that, I am very friendly, and I'm here to talk to you. So if I say something and you would like clarification, or you want me to stop, I'm happy to just have that conversation and have the questions as they come. So please interrupt me. I give scientific talks, right? And this is not one of them in a traditional sense. This is more of a story to connect and articulate, I think, why I'm here. But I'm going to start with some of my scientific background and move into why feminism is a fundamentally useful lens to think about power, science, and climate change in the future. So, I'm from the Pacific Northwest in Seattle, in the United States. And I'm a mom, I have a 5-year-old, and I'm a research associate at the University of Washington. I started in science to go scuba diving because I wanted to see the world, and I was excited about adventure and meeting people and making friends end up going scuba diving. I worked in Costa Rica and in Bermuda and then in Hawaii and spent about 1,000 hours underwater as a research diver. And I saw the wild blue heart of this planet. And I got my initial degree in biology, in marine biology, and I thought, oh, I'm gonna study corals, and I'm gonna study algae, and it's gonna be great. And I'm gonna go scuba diving. I'm gonna teach classes on ecological interactions, and this very clear path, right? Didn't work out that way. I think for many of us in science, it's a circuitous route, right? You start somewhere and then you navigate based on the doors that open and the doors that shut. And that's part of my career trajectory. So there's not a perfect answer for what a scientific career can look like. A lot of it is just a messy, sloppy, as you go process, an iterative process. So I was on a boat in the equatorial Pacific working for the US federal government, and I was in the remote Pacific island area. These are the colonized equatorial islands associated with the United States that include Myhre, Jarvis, Kingston, the equatorial atolls of the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. And I realized in that moment, in that time, that I wasn't prepared to understand what climate change actually meant to the living systems of our world. I was ignorant as to how to understand the planetary scale consequences of carbon emissions. So I went back to school to get my doctorate, my PhD, which took some time and some effort, but it was it was a choice to acknowledge my own ignorance and acknowledge that ecological science is insufficient to understand geological scale change. So I went to the University of California, Davis, and I got a degree in from the ecology department, but I specialized in climate change and oceanography and paleoceanography. Has anyone heard of the field of paleoceanography? No. If you have? Okay, so if you're at a cocktail party, never say the words paleoceanography, because people just like, whoa, just like, you are the dullest person possible to say those words. But it's one of the most incredibly powerful fields in science writ large, because of the fact that as we alter the planetary carbon system, the global ocean, the deep ocean, has 38 petagrams of carbon in the deep sea. 38,000 petagrams of carbon, excuse me. That's a gigaton of carbon. The atmosphere itself has about 600 petagrams of carbon. The terrestrial biosphere and all the soils has about 700 petagrams of carbon. So the deep sea is the carbon behemoth of the entire planet. So if you want to understand the carbon system, you have to be curious about the deep ocean. So the first quarter of my graduate work, I was on a research vessel in Santa Barbara Basin off of California. Santa Barbara is one of the most important places to extract climate records in the world, along with Antarctica and Greenland, and the cave records from China, the speleothems from China. The records from Santa Barbara reveal the low latitude climate oscillations of the last million years from an oceanographic perspective. So I was on a boat, and I thought at the time, like, oh, these are quite boring expedition, long hours. What I didn't realize later was that the records that we were collecting on that boat would become my dissertation. and I would spend 6 years painstakingly unraveling a story about the last 20,000 years on the planet. Because 20,000 years ago, we were in the middle of an ice age. In fact, over the last million years on Earth's planet, the planet has oscillated between cold glacial states and warm interglacial states. And it's been a heartbeat. Cold, warm, cold, warm. And that heartbeat of Earth's climate we see in stable isotope geochemistry from the oxygen isotopes in foraminifera, in the calcium carbonate of foraminifera. We see that same structure and pattern in the ice records from Greenland and Antarctica. We see the same records, same structure in tree ring records. So it's we reconstruct this global record and this global pattern in many different places across the world. And that heartbeat of cold to warm was fundamentally driven by the changing relationship between the Earth and the Sun, the orbital geometry, the wiggles and wobbles of Earth's rotation and orbit around the Sun produces geometric patterns of energy, where energy falls and how much energy falls on the surface of the planet. And so deglaciations, the glacial to interglacial cycles, principally driven by this beautiful geometric pattern that we know from geometry, from the mathematical science of from basic geometry. And it's one of the most incredible, I think, stories that people don't know about the planet. Is that there are these beautiful patterns to the way that the world has functioned in the past. Now, orbital variability has cycles, Those cycles are on 21,000, 40,000, and 100,000 years. But deglaciations happen very quickly. Deglaciations happen in 8,000 years, in 2,000 years. There are events inside of the deglaciation where we had temperature increases on the planet of approximately 6 degrees Fahrenheit. Excuse me for using Fahrenheit. It's terrible. It shows you, if orbital geometry is the only thing that changes Earth's climate, it shows you that we don't know the whole story. Because the real story is the carbon system, right? And the way that the carbon system produces positive feedbacks. So a small amount of energetic change on the planet produces enormous shifts in the carbon system. Soils, ocean circulation, the drawdown of carbon from ocean productivity, the volume of ice on the planet, sea level, atmospheric carbon concentrations, all of these things shift. So we know that now, in the face of anthropogenic climate change, because of course the past is the key to the future, there are a lot of parallels. We are looking at temperature rise, reorganization of ecosystems, and reorganization of ocean circulation, sea level rise, loss of ice, changing ocean circulation patterns, comprehensive reorganization of the biosphere across physical, chemical, biological, ecological, and cultural identities of the planet. So when I published my dissertation, there's your science for you. When I published my dissertation, I got a lot of media press. So the popular media is interested in science, right? And we train science to communicate in public to a certain degree. So I published my science, and I started to get more attention. And what I realized was that my communication in the world, my communication of basic science, was not being received in the same way as my male counterparts. So when I communicate about science in public, what I receive is misogyny. I am told I'm unqualified, I'm hysterical, I'm angry, I'm emotional, I'm hyper-emotional. There are all these ways that women's voices in the world produce very, very negative feedback. And so I think at the time I was like a baby feminist, like I had some tools, but I didn't really know what I was doing. And the feedback in public, the information that I was gathering was very curious to me, and honestly it was just completely distressing too, because it came with, now in my daily life, I have a constant barrage of harassment, rape threats. I am told that I'm going to swear here, but please excuse me, I'm a cunt, I'm a bitch. I'm told over and over again in public I'm unqualified because I'm a woman. And in the United States, I'm a white woman, and white women have enormous privileges. So as a white woman, I get this much vitriol and hate. It would only be worse. It would only be more awful if I was a woman of color, a Latinx woman. It would only get worse if I was not with my, white skin and tallness and my blonde hair, right? So trying to get more curious about what's happening in public led me to feminism. And I began to think about, what's happening in the world? What is happening around us? And I became curious about what misogyny is, and I started reading feminist philosophy. And people think that misogyny, is everybody familiar with the word misogyny? Unfortunately. So there's a feminist philosopher named Kate Mann who I would point you to, and I'm happy to connect you with her work. She wrote a book in the last year about the logic of misogyny. It's a philosophical treatise of what misogyny is. So we think of misogyny as the hatred of women, as if women are less than human. It's not true though. What misogyny is a comprehensive system of punishment across our private, sexual, personal, public, and professional lives that views women as all too human purveyors of certain social, moral services. Caring, loving, nurturing, connecting, ameliorating, facilitating, community building. These virtues, these moral services are not bad in and of themselves. They can be very good in certain places. But the problem is that when women step outside of that lane of performing these certain behaviors, the culture punishes us. So outside of that lane of behavior, male-coded moral goods and services include authority, certainty, power, control, agency. What are the things that women scientists have to demonstrate in public in order to communicate science? All of the masculine coded behaviors, right? All the masculine coded behaviors. And that is why there's a systemic punishment of our voices in public as women scientists, as authorities in public. It's because we are demonstrating, we are participating in these masculine coded behaviors, and the culture says, no, get back in your lane. Be nice, be agreeable, be sweet, be kind. We like that performance, but we don't like when you articulate your power and agency and authority in public. So getting curious about what is happening has gotten me a little bit closer to my own experiences as a woman in science. Because I have told you part of my story, but I haven't told you all of my story. Because when I was an undergraduate and I went to Costa Rica, I was in a very vulnerable position as a young woman in a remote place called Cambio, National Wildlife Refuge. And I was with a senior male scientist who was my advisor. He had to take me on a plane trip, and then an 8-hour bus ride, and then a 20-minute walk into the jungle in order for him to come on to me sexually. And when I refused his advances, he was very upset. And he ultimately left the research team days later, even though he had said, oh, I'll be here for 2 months. So he left 3 women, myself included, a PhD student from Colombia, and a master's student from Costa Rica, in a violent and dangerous village, principally driven by the trafficking of cocaine. It's a very dangerous place. I know from 2 of us, the 2 women, 2 of us were raped during that 2-month period afterwards. And the violence that I experienced and the malfeasance of this scientist and his predatory behavior, for a long time I thought that was my fault. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's the same thing the culture says. It says, what were you wearing? Were you out at night? Were you walking alone? Might be your fault. Probably your fault. So we internalize those messages as women, and then when things like this happen, when violence and violation happen to us, we say, yeah, that was my fault. It takes time to get closer to yourself as a woman, because the culture has told you, don't sit close to your own needs as a human being. View yourself as a product and a commodity that should be marketed and palatable to the men adjacent to you, and to the family members that are viewing you as a vehicle for performing domestic services. So, I have gotten closer to myself through this process of becoming a public feminist and really understanding that the violations that have happened to me were part of a systemic negligence that is a manifestation of the misogynistic society around us. We now know, because of a report that was published in June by the United States Academy of Science, Engineering, and Mathematics, that academic science has the highest rate of sexual harassment of any field, second only to the military.
That's in GSS, second to the military.
Second to the military. So military, abuse, harassment, and violence, science. Second. Right? And when this came out, this is in the midst of the Me Too movement, right, in the United States. And I know that there has been a parallel movement here, which I salute you as a feminist. When this came out, the women in science that I'm a community member of, we all said, yeah, makes sense, right? Because every single woman in science that I know has a parallel story of abuse, harassment, discrimination. So, what do we do? What do we do? And I don't know if, we don't have data, obviously, from the Chilean scientific societies. This is an empirical, social, and quantitative study from the National Academy of only U.S. science. But I can only imagine that there are direct parallels to the kinds of environments that women function in inside of scientific institutions in Chile, right? So what do we do? What do we do when we work inside institutions that do not protect us, that do not afford us comprehensive maternity leave, and view us as a commodity that is dismissible and unimportant? I don't have all the answers, but part of what I'm here today to tell you is to get very curious about your own experiences in the world and how the institution around you is functioning, and to organize. When we organize together as women, we become more powerful. When we organize together and honor each other's experiences, we can change the world. When we honor each other, we are told in the culture as women, there's only room for one woman at the table through that door. So you fight amongst yourselves. We are told between women that we are competition for each other, rather than fundamental allies. So we have to change the way that we view women in science and women in relationship, not to be competitors, but to be fundamental allies.